Good morning and welcome to Michigan Farm and Garden. I'm Jody Pollock Newsom and I'm your host. On the show this morning, we're going to talk wheat, and more wheat. We're going to talk from the elevator's perspective. We're also going to talk from the grower's perspective, and we're going to talk about research. Stay tuned. Good morning, and again, welcome to Michigan Farm and Garden. Folks, we have a great show lined up for you this morning. This morning, we are going to talk all about wheat. We certainly know how important agriculture is to our state. Certainly we know that's over $90 billion a year industry, and we also know that when we look at that, there are several different crops that are important in our state, and one of those is definitely wheat and our wheat industry. It has nearly a $400 million annual economic impact on the state, so very important. And it seemed like it was really time to bring a show to you to really talk about that industry. So to talk about that industry, my first guest this morning is Bruce Sutherland. He's from Michigan Ag Commodities. He is in the elevator industry. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they've seen. We're going to talk a little bit about the crop, the importance of the crop here in our state as far as it is a fall planted crop. We grow winter wheat, and we're going to talk about red wheat and white wheat. So lots of good information to kind of set that background for you. Then I also have with me this morning David Milligan. He is the chairman of the Michigan Wheat Promotion Committee and Board. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's the newest checkoff in the state. We're going to talk about how they're organized, what they do, and what the focus is. Then I also have with me this morning Martin Nagelkirk. He is with MSU Extension, and he's been looking at research and looking at the crop. So we're going to talk about some of those changes, looking at some of the management, and then I'm going to wrap the show up with a great recipe for cinnamon rolls. Folks, it's going to be a great show. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with our first guest right after the Michigan Farm and Garden Fact of the Week.
It's time for the Michigan Farm and Garden Fact of the Week.
Michigan has 8,000 wheat farmers in more than 50 counties, planting more than 500,000 acres of wheat per year. They produce about a 40 million bushel crop, which has about a $388 million annual economic impact. For more information, go to miwheat.org. And welcome back. We are back with Bruce Sutherland of Michigan Ag Commodities. Bruce, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jody. Thank you.
It's good to have you here. I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself and Michigan Ag Commodities, and then we'll talk wheat.
Sounds great. Well, I've been in the industry now for 30 years, and I've been with Michigan Agricultural Commodities, or MAC, for 27 years. You know, MAC got its start in 1976 as just a small trading company, and in the last 25 years and plus, we've grown into Michigan's largest commercial wheat handler as well as grain handler. We now have 8 locations in the state of Michigan and up to 45 million bushels of storage capacity.
Wow. And I think that's really interesting to watch that growth as we've seen the crops increase and look at our production. It just seems like there's a lot of potential when we look at Michigan, and wheat seems to be one of those industries with a lot of potential.
Definitely is. Michigan's wheat crop is the 3rd largest cash crop in the state, and it's just adds to our diversity in the state as agriculture goes.
Well, and we know certainly the importance of ag. We look at wheat. There's a lot of diversity even when we look at the state and look at the wheat crop.
That's right. You look at Michigan that grows winter wheat, soft winter wheat. And in those two commodities itself, soft winter wheat, we have a soft red and soft white. And two have very different specific uses in our industry.
Well, and I think that's so important too, because a lot of times I don't think people realize, you have wheat's more geared towards pasta, you have more towards the baking industry, the cereal industry. There is a lot of diversity within the wheat industry.
Sure. Let's take a look at white wheat first, which is used primarily in the cereal industry. The brand is used on the coat for making wheat, like frosted mini wheats, those types of products. Kellogg's, obviously, the nation's largest cereal producer, and Post, located in Battle Creek. So they use a lot of soft white. In fact, most of Michigan's soft white wheat stays in state for processing. Then soft red is used in cookies and crackers, in donuts, breakfast rolls, those types of products. And they're produced primarily in the state of Michigan, as well as in Toledo at Nabisco as well.
So great opportunities, and I mean, certainly too, when we look at the industry, we talk about all the changes. How have things changed when we look at wheat?
Well, Jody, wheat, in the 60s and 70s was considered just a generic commodity, both used for, obviously for wheat milling, but for feed as well. But now it's a food grade commodity and a specialty crop, if you will. And its importance to the food industry has really grown in the last 20 years.
Well, and I know certainly when we look at opportunities for growers and we look at different varieties and when a grower makes that decision, there are a lot of things to look at. If you're looking at corn, soybeans, wheat, how does all this come together, and then how do we market all that crop?
Oh, that's exactly right. And the unique thing about Michigan is we have 5 prominent wheat millers in the state of Michigan. Each one has their own specific needs and niches. And wheat can certainly add to the cash flow for a producer. It certainly adds the diversity of what they grow, and it gives them obviously a crop that's planted in the fall and harvested in the fall, and then harvested in the following summer. And it gives them a little bit of diversity in the time of cash flow and overall mix for what they're doing. Plus, they can look at soft red or white, and depends on where they are in the state, their locale, that type of thing, to decide what's best for them to grow and to market.
Well, and we certainly look at how markets stay and how they change and look at some of those trends, but it just seems like when we look at wheat, we've had good, strong markets over the past years.
And that's going to continue. We've seen, home baking, those types of things flatten out and decline, but ready-to-made cereals, breakfast foods, those types of things are actually growing in use. And Michigan wheat certainly fits right into those needs.
Well, and I know too, when we look at producers and we look at production and we look at some of the environmental, wheat also seems to be one of those nice crops that, besides what you mentioned, looking at helping with some of the cash flow and the timing, it's also good because we're looking at having something that's in that ground all winter long, which I think is good, but also challenging when you look at, that's a long time to have a crop in the field.
That's right. It's an important part of the crop rotation. It's great, as I said, plant in the fall, over winters, reduce the soil erosion, those types of things. So environmentally, it's a very good practice for producers to have wheat in their crop rotation.
Well, and as you guys look to the future, what are some of the things that you see and some of the opportunities for the wheat industry?
Well, Joey, as you well know, the growth in whole grain food consumption, especially the concerns about fiber, protein, Michigan wheat fits right in for that. We continue to see, as I mentioned before, our 5 million industries in the state of Michigan. Each has their own niche, and they continue to service those niches. And I think that the growth for wheat consumption actually may start to improve, again, because of people's need and desire to improve their consumption of whole grains, protein, and fiber.
Well, and too, I think as we look ahead, and we're going to talk more about some of the research, but even when you look at marketing, it's a nice piece. I mean, wheat really fits into that really well when you look at that marketing and that bottom line for the farm.
Oh, definitely. And hey, the demand for locally grown, locally produced, and processed. Michigan wheat's been doing that now for well over 100 years when you think about it. It's one of the few crops that we grow in-state, and the majority of that crop stays in-state, filling the local needs and demand.
Well, and Bruce, as you look ahead, and this is kind of, I didn't even tell you I was going to ask this, but as we look at Michigan agriculture, what are some of the opportunities? Because I know you really focus on wheat, but MAC, you guys look at the gamut.
Oh, certainly. Hey, when you look at corn and soybeans, global demand is huge and continues to grow. You look at soybeans, 20 years ago we produced a crop of 35 million, now we're well in excess of 75 million bushels of soybeans. Corn continues to grow to meet not only feed demand, but for the ethanol industry. Michigan's agricultural growth continues to expand, and I think not only domestically, but export-wise, there's great potential.
Great. Bruce, I always like to leave it on a positive note, and I knew there were good things coming. Thank you so much.
Oh, Jody, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Folks, certainly as we hear more about Michigan agriculture, as we think about the row crops, look at the diversity that we have in our state, it's very important to make sure we bring all those pieces together. And also, it's a really good time to get excited about what that potential is. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this message.
The Cherry Marketing Institute wants you to know about tart cherries. Cherry's red color comes from powerful antioxidants. Available year-round, it's easy to incorporate cherries into your daily diet. Visit ChooseCherries.com.
Michigan's 1,000 apple growers take pride in producing delicious apples from one generation to the next. From the Great Lakes come great flavors. Look for locally grown Michigan apples.
Have Jody speak at your next agricultural event. Go to jodylive.com.
And welcome back. We are back with Dave Milligan, a Cass City farmer and on the wheat program board. So Dave, it's good to have you here this morning.
Well, good morning, Jody. It's nice to be here.
I'm going to have you start and just tell us a little about your option, and then we'll talk more about kind of wheat and how you got involved.
Well, I'm kind of a lifetime farmer, a third-generation farmer. Like you mentioned, Cass City, that's up in Tuscola County. We raise corn, wheat, dry beans, and soybeans. Roughly on about 5,000 acres, probably about 1,000 acres of each crop.
Keeps you busy and out of trouble, huh?
Oh yeah, sometimes.
Well, and I know, Dave, you've been really involved, and we talk a lot about the show on the importance of agriculture, but also I think the importance of growers getting involved, letting people know what happens in agriculture, and getting involved. I know you've been involved on the bean board and now with the wheat industry.
Well, of course, farming's more than just going out and working in your own field. There's more to that, and it's important to have an image for agriculture. At one time everybody was related to a farmer or something, but now as generations get a lot further away from the farm, most people are to a point they aren't related to anybody. They have no experience around a farm. They really don't understand where their food actually comes from a lot. So really, you really need to be involved and get the message out of really what agriculture is about.
Well, and I know you've been involved in beans, and probably one of the biggest things is wheat, looking at the wheat industry and getting a wheat organization up and going.
Yeah, I was spent several years on the Michigan Bean Commission and a national bean organization too, and the opportunity or the need came up for the wheat industry wasn't represented with a checkoff or anything, and it kind of was falling behind as far as research on compared to corn and soybeans, and we're part of a group that saw this need and got a referendum around here 2 years ago and put before the voters, the growers being the voters, and they did approve a checkoff to support the wheat program.
Well, and I think that's so interesting, and a lot of folks I know, if you don't have that ag background, there's not a lot of checkoffs, but they're a great opportunity really to get all growers of that commodity to put funds into that organization to really look out just for that organization. And in wheat, you guys have done a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. We certainly, it's a challenge, but it's 0.5% is how it's funded. The wheat as it's sold, 0.5% of the value. And we certainly use that for funding research, promotion, and all the activities and help the growers. And not only once we find the research, we need to get it out to the growers. And we have a lot of plots, and we're just getting started on the research proposals. And hopefully we'll get something. We're certainly looking for some cutting-edge research, something that's really useful to the growers. Certainly a lot of challenges in the wheat business as far as disease and fertility keeps changing, and pesticides, new pests and new controls coming along. It seems like every year we have to change the program somehow. It's just it's real challenging in the wheat industry today.
Well, and I've been very excited that you guys have been able to do that and have kind of looked to bring staff on board. That's probably my favorite accomplishment.
Well, as you were hinting away here, Jody, one of the first challenges we had as we organized was to find an executive director, and through a search process, we secured your services, and it's been a great for the wheat industry. I feel it's been great. Somebody with your experience has certainly been very valuable to get this program going, the ins and outs of what it takes to run a commodity organization, and you've certainly shown a lot of enthusiasm for the new challenge that you've gladly accepted. And it's been a win-win, I think, for everybody. So.
Well, and I certainly feel that way. It's been a great opportunity, and as we look at the past year and all the accomplishments that wheat's been able to do, I know one of those was a wheat college. So I'm going to have you just tell us a little bit, and then we'll roll a video.
Well, just last 25th of June, we had the opportunity that we worked with Michigan State University and Farm Journal, put on this wheat college, and we had sponsors. We helped sponsor, and several other sponsors from the industry, and It was an all-day event at Michigan State University and well attended. Certainly a lot of hands-on experience to be able to go out and look at the wheat and count heads and count kernels, and two great wheat experts there. I think a great opportunity, and I think it was well received, and we certainly look to do things like that in the future.
Well, we're going to go ahead. I know we have a clip from that event, so we'll go ahead and we'll roll that clip right now when you can go ahead and look at Wheat College.
Wheat growers in Michigan returned to the classroom for a one-day wheat college at Michigan State University. Uniformity, planting depths and rates, nitrogen management, head count evaluations, along with disease and insect management, were all a part of the hands-on learning experience.
Oh, I think that's a huge portion of it. You know, anytime we can teach farmers through the learning process, when they can see it, feel it, touch it, it makes it a much easier learning process, and that's really what we try to go for.
The Michigan Wheat Program is a relatively new checkoff in the state. By hosting this event, organizers hope to increase both the knowledge and excitement among wheat growers.
Unlike some of the other checkoffs, we don't have all the results because we've only been around for a little more than a year. So we thought it made a lot of sense to work with some folks and work with some national folks and some researchers at MSU and do a program here in Michigan pertinent to Michigan growers and really kind of get people more knowledgeable and more excited about wheat.
This is that cephalosporium, Martin, that I was talking about. You see the stripe along the leaf? It's so rare. We don't see it. I haven't seen that in years. Yeah, this was a big one in Kansas.
Michigan State University researchers conducted field demonstrations on the crop.
And those are actually fruits. Those are the fungal fruits.
Project Green, one of the sponsors of the Farm Journal Wheat College, is interested in promoting the agricultural industry in Michigan.
Project Green funding is important to be matched by industry funding, and programs like the Michigan Wheat Program leverage that funding and allow us both to do more with the money that we have in support of agriculture in Michigan.
When we got not only their facilities, but resources of their own people and their staff combined with the Farm Journal experts, I think it makes a really good team and a really great offering to bring to the farmers.
From Michigan State University, I'm Craig M. reporting.
And welcome back from a great overview of a great event. Dave, I know the Wheat Board, you guys have been really busy and looking forward to some, I think, great opportunities in the future.
Well, wheat's a great crop, and we have a lot of opportunities in Michigan with the millers and the Kellogg's and the Posts and all those other people, the cereal companies we have. It's a great fit as a crop in Michigan.
Great. Well, Dave, thank you. I appreciate it. Good to have you here. Folks, certainly we know how important agriculture is to our state, but we don't always stop and really look at the opportunities. When we look at the wheat industry, certainly an economic powerhouse in the state, certainly with lots of opportunities for the future. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this message.
Is the fast track to more jobs and America's energy independence. Advanced performance is here now. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
And welcome back. We are back with Martin Engelkirk, MSU Extension. Martin, it's good to have you here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself, and I know you've been working on wheat for a long time.
For a long time. Yeah, I work with Michigan State University Extension in a field position in the thumb of Michigan where we grow lots of wheat. And so I worked in the past with all kinds of crops, but more and more as the decades passed, as it turned out, I've been working more and more with wheat and focusing on that and taking some responsibility for leadership in Extension and MSU with wheat across Michigan. So it's been quite a ride, and it's very exciting.
Well, and certainly when we look at wheat, I think it's one of those crops that's been around a long time, but folks probably really don't know that much about the industry or even the crop.
Yeah, and maybe your former guest probably mentioned this too. In Michigan, we grow the soft wheats. They're primarily winter wheats, and so that serves the end users related to crackers and cookies and that sort of thing, which is a huge industry internationally. And we play an important role in that. And as you know, we grow red wheat and white wheat. So we have soft red winter wheat and soft white winter wheat. And we grow both of those in Michigan. The white wheat in particular is very much a specialty crop, and that serves Nabisco and Kellogg's and Post and all the big companies and some of their specialized products. And so I feel pretty special, or I think wheat is pretty special in Michigan, yeah.
Well, and I know when we look at white wheat, I mean, that is certainly a crop that's been grown in several other states, but really a lot of that acreage has declined.
Yeah, in the United States, you know, you've got the Northwest U.S. Still grows quite a bit, but on this side of the Mississippi, there's only a few of us left, and in fact, it has really left much of New York State, another traditional area in Pennsylvania and Ontario. And so we still have a pretty strong industry, especially in the thumb, but in other parts of Michigan as well. And so we're trying to hold on to that specialty wheat. And I think we can do that.
Well, and I know we look at growing too, red wheat, white wheat. There's definitely differences in susceptibility and in the riskier crops and those kinds of things
yeah,
too.
Yeah, and they're essentially the same crop, certainly the same species. And in fact, there's only a couple of genes that separate that kernel difference. And so in terms of management, it's pretty much the same. But white wheat, inherent in white wheat, is a little bit more risk, especially associated with some diseases and that inclination to sprout prematurely. And so there are some additional risks with white wheat that we can't overlook.
Well, and I know one of the things, and working with the wheat program and the wheat checkoff, one of those areas we look at is research, and that's definitely one of those areas that you've looked at over the years. What can we do to that crop? How can we help with the yields, and how can we help with the qualities?
Yeah, exactly. And so with growers, partnering with them, and certainly with the new wheat board, looking at ways that we can affect that in some way. So those risks, but also in trying to improve yields. Because we compete with a lot of other enterprises out there in different crops, and so we certainly want to keep wheat on the map. So yeah, we focus on research and extension and education with growers to try to keep that a very viable enterprise. And so related to research, we might look at various inputs or any inputs related to fertilization or disease control or insect control. So all those things that impact profitability on the farm.
Well, and certainly I know when we look at wheat, look at those opportunities, it just seems like a crop that hasn't had as much of the focus as some of the others in the past. When we look at yields, yield increases, but we still have opportunities to bump that up pretty dramatically.
Yeah, and that's what's really exciting in the last couple of years. Wheat is often overlooked. It's still a very important component, and especially when it leaves the farm and serves the milling industry and the seed producers and the end users. Collectively, it's a very important part of Michigan's economy. And so, yeah, we're fairly, we think it's fairly important. And that's what's really exciting when the growers elected to get together, put some dollars together, and fund the wheat board. That in itself is the best step that has happened in decades. And so that'll help bring more attention to that crop, and I think will make a real difference. And collectively, along with Michigan State Universities and the millers and other interested parties, we hope to work together effectively to bring a lot more attention to that crop and help growers make sure that it remains a profitable crop here.
Well, and I know when we look state average, 76 bushels per acre when we look at wheat, but I know up in the thumb where you're based, their growers are getting a lot higher yields than that.
Oh, sure. Some of our monitors on the combines are starting to ring the bell at 120, 130, 140. It serves to show us and demonstrate that there is some upside potential. And we clearly are doing better. I guess, yeah, 75, 76, or 70 sounds very modest, but relative, when you average everything across the state, that's not too bad. And we did break the yield record 2 years in a row. I don't know that this year we'll make it 3 years in a row, but if we can make incremental 1 or 2 bushel steps upward, I think that'll be quite an accomplishment.
Well, and too, I think one of the neat things about wheat is we're looking at that whole approach, and really, as you look at the future, Martin, what are some of those things that you see?
I think nitrogen management is a key one. It's a very elusive nutrient. It's not any different than anywhere else in the world. It's the most a limiting nutrient, but it's also very elusive and hard to manage and in a very responsible environmental way. I think we need more work there. Pests, probably more so than our row crops, is always a threat. When you look at diseases in particular, it walks away with an awful lot of yield every year. And that's when we have to manage in terms of through varietal selection and development, but also through the use of aids and medicines for plants, fungicides and such. And then also just having more soldiers feet on the ground and looking and making sure we understand what the dynamics are there and what the threats are and what the actual pests are, because there's literally dozens of potential risks to that crop.
So we always seems like we always run out of time too quick, but we're glad you're out there and looking out for us, and we'll keep our feet on the ground and see what we can do to further that crop. That sounds pretty good to me.
That sounds very good to me.
Folks, certainly a lot of opportunities when we look at wheat, but a lot of things we need to be prepared for. Stay tuned. I'll be back right after this message.
This chicken is beak over claw for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one chicken may not be too much to cluck about, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing, our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
Welcome back, and I think you can see what a great opportunity it is to be able to work with and support the Michigan wheat industry. Certainly we know the importance of wheat in the diet. This is a very, very easy recipe, very good. This is for cinnamon rolls. And certainly when we think of wheat, we want to make sure we're thinking of those cinnamon rolls. You're basically going to take and mix your dry ingredients together, which is going to be your flours, your brown sugar, powdered milk, salt, yeast. Go ahead, then in a separate bowl mix your wet ingredients, your water, your brown sugar, and some more yeast there. Mix all that together, and then add some oil, molasses, and warm water. Mix that, and then make sure you get the dough to the consistency that you want, and you know how we need that dough. We want to make sure we need that. Let that sit, let that rise, and then you'll go ahead and either divide that if you want to do bread, because you can use this recipe for bread, or you can go ahead and punch that down, let that rise again, and then for cinnamon rolls, you want to roll that out into a big rectangle. Go ahead, add your brown sugar, your cinnamon, your sugar. You can add, we're in Michigan, I love to add dried cherries, dried blueberries. You can go ahead and add raisins, whatever it is your favorite dried fruit is, roll that up, slice those, put that in the oven. You'll go ahead and bake that on 350 for about 26 to 30 minutes. Then take those out and go ahead and add frosting. If you wanted to, you could also add a garnish. You could put some dried cherries on top, some dried blueberries, anything that really helps make that more Michigan and really helps highlight that recipes. As always, you can visit us online at MichiganFarmandGarden.com or write to Michigan Farm and Garden Recipes, P.O. Box 461, Williamston, Michigan 48895, and you can have this very easy recipe. You know, it's been a great opportunity this morning to bring to you more information about the wheat industry. We know how important agriculture is to our state. We don't always get to talk enough about wheat, but it's almost $400 million for just this one industry. Keep that in mind. Have a great week, and I'll see you back here next weekend. Bye-bye.
You're not dreaming.